Please welcome the director of the film. I'll start with Irene Brodsky. Irene, thank you so much. Irene has directed many films. Here now being one of the many acclaimed ones. I'll also thank you so much for being here. I believe Alexis is sitting here, so we'll start moving down from there. We'll also invite Jonas Brodsky. Jonas, please. Thank you so much for being here. And while you're cheering, please welcome Sally Ann Taylor. Sally. Hello, the family here. Please welcome the producer of the film, Tahria Sheater. Thank you so much for being here. And please welcome back Alexis Kashar, president of JDRC, to moderate this conversation. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing a very personal story from you and your family. I have so many questions for you and so little time. I will start with, I think, the most obvious question, first to you, Irene. Both the filmmaker and the mother of Jonas. What prompted you to share this very personal story with the public? And what did you hope for the public to get from this film?
First, I want to thank you, interpreter. I'm going to let you sign for me so that I can hold this microphone. Well, a personal memoir is not new to me. In fact, I did it once before, and I said I would never, ever do it again. So I'm not sure what came over me, but I think it had something to do with the cosmic irony of having a deaf son. After I made a film 12 years ago about my mother and father, Sally and Paul. And the following year, after I made that film, we found out Jonas was nearly deaf, and within a couple of years, he was deaf. And it actually goes back to a long-time relationship I have with HBO. And at the time, because HBO had been a champion of my film Here and Now, they asked if I was going to document Jonas's childhood. And they gave me the resources to just document Jonas as a kid. And we didn't know what we were going to do with it. And honestly, I didn't have the emotional resources to make a film about Jonas at that time. It's a very different experience to have a deaf son than it is to have deaf parents. And we live in such a different age than when even I was growing up with my deaf parents. So there were just so many things I felt ill-equipped, and making a movie about it as I stumbled through it just was not something I wanted to take on. Jonas ultimately prompted me to start filming again, because when he told me he wanted to learn this piece, I started looking into it, and I realized it was this watershed year in Beethoven's life. And I found it beautifully poetic that Jonas had chosen this piece, and it was not because he knew anything about Beethoven. It was because he loved the melody. He loved the voice of Beethoven. And so I started making the film thinking it was about a deaf boy learning a piece by a composer as he went deaf. And I thought that was a sufficient narrative. And then my father started to develop dementia in the course of our filming over a year, and it started happening very rapidly. So since he's part of my family and he lives 2 blocks away, we very organically brought him into the film. And we realized, Tahria and I, that Paul was helping us better understand as filmmakers and storytellers what it may have felt like for Beethoven to lose something so precious to him and to lose it slowly and consciously. And so we decided we wanted to try to put Paul in the film, and at first it was a little bumpy because it was emotionally difficult for me, but it was also, we weren't sure how to bring him in. But as the story unfolded and Jonas started playing more with his implants off just to experience the music in a different way, we realized it was really a story about 3 deaf people over 3 centuries. And it was about this deaf boy growing up in a new world and a deaf man growing old in a world that he hardly recognized anymore. And Beethoven, as he was going deaf some 250 years or 200 years earlier. So that's the long story of how it happened, but it really did happen in steps like that.
That's a very interesting story because I am also from a deaf family, a 3-generation deaf family. And my experience is very different than that of my parents because technology changes things and people have different experiences now. And we all have to recognize that. My next question is for Sally. I want to ask you about communication. You use American Sign Language in your family. How do you relate to your grandson? How do you feel about the communication dynamics within your family?
Wow. It's a powerful question. In our family, naturally, we speak with the kids and the family because we did that for many years. We talk to them, lip read, and then through the years, some signs started to show up, and then they learned more how to sign. I didn't learn how to sign until I was almost 20 myself. And my children, we could understand them when they spoke, but there were many times that they would fingerspell or sign words that I couldn't lip read. And as time went on, I mean, of course, at the dinner table, for example, we would all be around the table and be talking, and I said, you know, thank God I had a partner that I could talk with because I couldn't follow the conversation that was happening audibly. And many times the kids would, tell us what happened, and I would accept that. But now with the grandchildren, at the beginning it was difficult because I lived so far from them on the East Coast, while our kids they moved and lived on the West Coast, and we saw them maybe 2 or 3, 4 times a year, which wasn't enough for the grandchildren to really know how to communicate with us as their grandparents, deaf grandparents, so that we would speak. And I thought, okay, well, we'll just give them time.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we decided to move west, we wanted to see the kids more and they would give them an opportunity to know us more and learn how to really communicate with us. And that was the best move that we made, that we could have made. And then they, we would try and talk to them, and they would try and sign to us, and we would try and sign to them, sorry. And we would start understanding them, and who was the most expressive?
Gil.
I'm sorry.
Gil.
Gil was the most expressive. And there was all different kinds of communication in the household. It was a lot of fun. But at times it was very frustrating, like when the family would get together and eat at the table. And Paul and I still had each other. So I'm glad I have a deaf husband and someone who to communicate with if everyone around me is talking.
I have to say that your daughter Irene signs beautifully. You should be very proud of her signing. For Jonas, I have a question for you. Why was this film important to you? Why did you want to see it get made, and what did you want to get out of it?
I thought that, well, first of all, why I thought this film was made. I thought it was made for my mom. Well, first of all, she wanted to have something of us that it could get passed on and everyone could see it. Hello? Test? Okay. Also, what I think about it being made, well, I think it was a great choice and it was a great opportunity for me to like learn about what it would be like to be like a subject of a film and like grow up in this world of being deaf around my grandparents and around this famous music composer and just what that would be like for me. And I know that my mom had a really good time filming it. And it was like, I thought it was a really good story, so yeah.
It's a beautiful story for sure. My next question is for Tahria. How did you get involved in this project? And what does it mean for you to bring this film to the public?
Yeah, Irene and I had connected a few months earlier and through a mutual friend. Portland is a small film community, and we were connected, and it was just sort of serendipity that she was starting this project, and I was coming out of a couple of projects, and so we started working together. And I think on the first day of working together, I did the interview with Paul in the kitchen for 3 hours with Irene, and you know, we just kind of dived headfirst into it. And I think, honestly, for me, this is a new world. You know, I didn't have a lot of exposure to, I didn't have any deaf friends. I didn't have any deaf people in my family. And this family has welcomed me so generously into their lives. But I guess for me, this is a story about understanding who you are, understanding your identity. You know, for me, this is a story both about deafness, but also about family, about the creative process and really finding your voice. So, you know, I hope that this film, as much as it resonates with you know, Sally and Jonas, it will also resonate with people of all abilities, because I think that this story is really a universal one.
I'd just like to add that there is no possible way I could have made the film without my partner, Tahria. Think about that interview with my dad, 3 hours long, if I had done the interview, and how he would have talked to me. He would have said, oh, well, honey, you know the answer to that. Oh, honey, you have to have someone who's fresh. So she was critically important. And I actually leaned over to her just tonight, and I said, I can't believe we got that interview. Which is a good moment for me to say, I'm sorry to say my father has really declined. It's why he's not here. And we are unbelievably grateful to Tahria because she pulled so much of my dad out in this film that you would never have seen, and I would have never seen, if it weren't for someone who wanted to deeply, deeply understand his experience. And she could interview for a long time. And she also did Jonas's interview.
So this question is for any of the family members, whoever feels most comfortable responding. What do you think you learned about yourself through this process?
I think I learned about myself that if you really push yourself, you can achieve things that you could never think about, that you never knew you could achieve. And also, I think it's really inspiring to have someone like Beethoven and such a beautiful piece that you can look up to and kind of like put all of your work towards just to feel like that good feeling of like finishing something, but it's really good.
Unfortunately, we have to wrap up the interview, but I would like to give the audience a chance to ask just maybe 1 or 2 questions. I'm asking Isaac to maybe help out with, okay, 2 questions from the audience. Are we, you right here in front, I believe. A microphone's coming to you.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Arlene Romoff. I'm also deaf. I also have bilateral cochlear implants. I've also played the piano, and I just wanted to comment more than a question, because I watched this movie from a very different perspective than I guess a lot of other people in this auditorium. And I know what it's like to take off my implants and play the piano, and you don't hear the mistakes because it's in your mind. And I just love this film. I just wanted to gush and share that I was late deaf and adult. And as I was losing my hearing like Beethoven, I could hear what my brain filled in, what I couldn't hear anymore, and I called it playing by the Beethoven method. So I just really wanted to share that with you, that we could probably talk for many hours.
Thank you. So we do have one last question that we can take from the audience. Hands.
So my name is Jeff Faig. My question is for Jonas. Jonas, so obviously this is a record for you and for your family. And I'd like to know, first of all, how do you feel looking back and seeing your struggle at working with the piece? And then when you watch the whole thing, at the end, when you watch your final performance, how do you think you did?
Looking back 1 or 2 years ago when I was playing this piece, there were definitely moments where I struggled a lot, and as time went on, I really understood how to like capture emotion and like learn to be able to play the piece really well. And I definitely got something out of it really important, not only for me, but for everyone else here, for being able to adventure on this journey with me. And through the final performance, I didn't think I did bad. I mean, I'd probably give myself a 4.5.
I'd give him a 6 myself, but
Folks, this conversation is just starting. We're going to have a whole week of conversations here and more opportunities to discuss. Please help spread the word. I want to thank Alexis and our whole panel here, and the filmmakers, the family for being here.